course, you can see our brand new Business Law Institute. So we're excited about moving into the new space, the former Space Center, and establishing the Business Law Institute. We're very excited to have Mr. Bill Luckett, an attorney at the Luckett Law Firm in Clarksville, Mississippi. He's also running for mayor there. He has taught a skill session course this past January entitled Lawyers as Entrepreneurs, and went over some real estate investments he has, and of course he has extensive real estate experience, and we're very fortunate that he can come share that with lawyers. It is designed for you to get some practical skills and go out in the workforce, use your discretionary income to build up communities and try to use that to gain some income for yourself while practicing law. So we hope you appreciate and take some good things away from this event. So give it up for Mr. Luckett.
Mr. Perez, how long do I have before they have to leave the room?
We have officially till 1:15.
Q&A.
Q&A.
Okay, keep an eye on.
All right.
Thank you for that introduction. It wasn't as glowing as most of them I get, but that's all right with me. I don't have much of an ego. I taught a course at winter session called Lawyers as Entrepreneurs. I had a couple of students who were in that class who are in the crew now in here today. And I did touch on some entrepreneurship that I have been engaged in addition to my law practice. And with 45,000 lawyers coming out of law schools collectively in this country every year, seeking 25,000 traditional lawyering jobs, straight up lawyering, there's a need and apparently some room for some other skills to enter into your skill set. And one thing I did, I speak to you really from practical experience. I had a banker call me in 1991, a friend of mine, and said, "Bill, why don't you buy my mother-in-law's house over at 438 Maple?" And I said, "I don't need another house, thank you." He said, "No, you could, you know how to paint and do things like that. You can make it into a rental property." Well, that kind of put the proverbial bug up my nose, so I looked at the house. I saw what could be done, and I could do a lot of it, and I decided to take that chance as a real estate entrepreneur. Before that time, I had a history as a house painter. In fact, the first house I painted here in Oxford happened to be that of Robert and Margaret Caius. He had just come back here as a first year or second, whatever I was in, professor to teach civil procedure. He saw me in the classroom in my white shirt, and stick my cap in my back pocket, my khaki pants with paint on them probably, and said, "Do you paint houses?" I said, "Yes." He said, "How about painting mine?" So that was my first job here. I ended up doing a lot of bigger jobs. The Phi Delta Theta house at that time, it housed a lot of my friends during college. I was out of state to college, but a lot of my buddies were Phi Deltas, and that house at the time, it's not the one that's here now, had, I think, 112 windows and doors on the outside. 112. We call them openings of the business. And I painted that house, hi-fi house, a lot of homes out on College Hill, all these places all around town, a lot of professors' homes, that sort of thing. But I had learned how to do house painting, and that got me into construction generally. And then I was off in the military. I was an officer, and I commanded an engineering company in the Army, actually the National Guard, Mississippi Guard at that time. So I came into the picture when Jerry D'Antone called me and said, "How about buying my mother-in-law's house?" with about 3 of the 5 basic elements that would help you get ahead, at least in the real estate business that I'm in. Now, I'm not building things like this yet. It looks like it's out of Batman or Beijing, but wherever, you can get there if you start earlier. See, I was, whatever I was in 1991, what was that, 22 years ago, so I was in my about 41 or 2 at that time when I started. I kind of wish I'd started earlier, because what getting into real estate did for me is I fixed these houses up and turned around and rented them, and I'm going to give you all the things I had to learn the hard way. You get it real easy today. It gave me ultimately equity in a lot of property, and I use that equity as sort of a borrowing base now. I have 23 properties up as collateral for what started out as a large loan. Large for me is $1.7 million or something, just on that sort of my side of business. And I'd pay it down, and then when I ran for governor, and that cost me $1 million, I had to run back, borrow against it again. So when I run out of money, I go to the bank and just say, how about a few $100,000? It's that easy, okay? You can be there 20 years earlier than I got there if you start about now. But if you wait a few years, it won't kill you. But being a lawyer, being a businessman, being a handyman or woman, being a contractor, certainly residential, and being an entrepreneur are the ingredients that you would find ideally in what I do. I'm not a licensed contractor, I'm an unlicensed contractor. Same results, just you work as the owner. You get the same building permits and all that when you're redoing property. I started out modestly with that one house at 438 Maple. I don't know what my number's on it, but I bought it for, I think, $22,000, maybe $25. Put maybe 6 or 7. Typically, I'd install central heat and air in these houses, split units, outside condenser, inside heat and air and fan. Put the ductwork in, put an attic stairwell in, get rid of the floor furnace that typically existed between the bedrooms opposite the door of the bath, and just replace that with stained plywood and tell them to put a rug down. But it works. And I rented that house just like this to a nurse, and I thought, oh, that was easy. I'll do that again, and again, and again, and again, and put about 30 more agains after it. And then I decided to get a little bolder, a little riskier. And after about 35 houses, I started buying buildings. And I would buy modest-sized buildings, 2-story, make 2 apartments up, and retail if it could stand it, if not residential on the first floor. And then I got a little bolder, and I'll show you a couple of buildings now that I got a little bit out of my skin on. And when I lost my play money running for governor a couple of years ago, I had to sort of back up and hope I can rebuild it to tackle a couple of them you'll look at later. So let's move on quickly here on this. I have a formula that works. In the old days, you could charge 1% of your total investment price per month as rent. 1% per month as rent. And you could typically cover, in days without superinflation or super high rates or anything, all your payments necessary that are required on real estate. If you borrow money, you've got principal to repay, you've got interest to pay, you've got taxes, and you've got insurance. You've got a couple of, they hurt you, but you don't have to pay for them unless you have a lot of maintenance and vacancy. So 1% in the old days used to cover that. Now it takes between 1 1/4 and 1 1/2. Why? Taxes primarily have gone up a whole lot, and insurance somewhat. Fortunately, interest rates are way down now, but still 1 1/4 to 1.5%. And there's a slide that sort of tells you about that. This is an easy example. You put $60,000 to purchase a property. You add another 40 in improving the property to get it rentable, attractive, curb appeal, as they say. You got $100,000 in it. I would want you, and you should expect to charge between $1,250 and $1,500 a month, and you fit within my formula, and that dynamic works under any normal circumstance. Back when some of you were thoughts in your parents' heads, like in the late 70s, interest rates got to be up in like 17%. Of course, money market rates were paying you 20%, but if you were young out of school, you didn't have much money in the money market, you were looking to borrow, and it was just a horrible situation. But for the last several years, interest rates have been way down. And so it's a good time to get into this business. It's also a good time to get in this business because foreclosures, for whatever reason, are up. And you can pick up some properties just about dirt cheap if you just work hard, get to be friends with some bankers. Now, a couple of things that we learned in my entrepreneur course are what are the capital investment and how that's treated for taxes and what's an expense. You'll get in some arguments with your CPA later about the difference in the two. Expenses are charged against your revenue, so they reduce your income on which you'll be taxed. Capital contribution, you sort of spread it out over time. It kind of goes in as a permanent notion to improve the improvement, which is the structure on the real estate. I'll call it real property, but improvements are like the building and raw land is underneath. Typically, again, I'll call real estate or real property. And that is depreciable over a number of years, typically 29 and a half or 35, just depends on the property and where you fit in that scheme. So they are treated differently for tax purposes though. What would you rather do when you're repairing something in your house? You'd rather count it as what? As an expense, okay? If you can. And there's some rules and there's a gray area, just like in anything legal. There's a gray area that you kind of meet that where I don't know which way to go with it, but treat it as an expense and argue about it later if you get there. Next slide, please. 6 variables in real estate like I do. And they're right there. Principal is misspelled. Did you correct my spelling? Okay. I spelled it right, that's wrong. Principal is P-A-L, right?
Correct.
I don't know how that got changed. I'm looking right at where it came from. Anyway. Principal is the amount of money you borrow that you owe back. Interest is what the bank makes to make a living that it charges you on top of the principal. Taxes, we know what that is. We're talking about real estate taxes now, not income tax. Insurance, you got it. Most lenders require you to give them a certificate of insurance so that your property that they kind of hold, at least temporarily, has got insurance against any kind of fire, flood, or other, not really flood usually, but unless it's in the zone, you have to have that. And then maintenance and vacancy. How many of these can you control pretty much? You can totally control principal because you know what you're going to borrow, and if you don't borrow it, you don't have it. Interest, you negotiate it, you can control that. You don't have to get into a property if the lender wants to charge you 15% or something. Taxes, out of control, at least out of yours right now. But you can bank on the fact that you're not going to get any huge, substantial increases over the years. Insurance, you can negotiate around. There really are some better deals than others out there, not the Progressive lady, but you need to shop. I found I have an apartment complex, State Farm gave me a tremendously good rate on it until I had a loss and they cut me loose and I'm a Travelers, but my independent agent couldn't really place me with a good company. So sometimes it helps to shop for insurance. Maintenance, if you fix it up really well to start with and your tenant is under a good lease where they don't just destroy it, you should have low maintenance at least for a few years out. And vacancy, well, that's the thing that's said about real estate that's the same about lawsuits. Location, location, location. And vacancy you can control somewhat. Just pick properties that have some curb appeal in an area that there is a need for real estate. Next one, please. Just getting into the deals, I'm going to show you some samples, and I think Mr. Perez has passed some around. Those are hard to read. Is that the best we got on that? Okay. This is a house that, there you go, just leave that front page. I formed a little partnership for a friend of mine to own some property in Memphis, and the name of the partnership was 6900 Amberley Road. That's because that was the address of the property. And he and I had a partnership, and we contracted with this seller through Crye, which is a big real estate firm in North Mississippi, Memphis, and actually all over the South now. To buy that apparently for $148,000. And these things get fairly complicated as you look through them, but typically in any kind of larger deal, you're going to find that there's going to be a purchase agreement, purchase and sale. I don't know if those words are in the right order, are they? It should be sale and purchase agreement, I think. But anyway, that's what it is. There's one for you. In bigger deals, you'll find that. With what I was doing, I had some friends in Clarksdale who worked for real estate companies, and when they would spot a house that sort of fit in what they knew I was looking for, they would call me and they'd say they had something for whatever price. I was buying them kind of low end. And I'd go look at it and I'd say, yeah, I'll take it or I'll offer X or whatever. And then they'd call, and I'd say, we don't need any contracts, I'll have a check in the morning, and I'll do the deed myself, here it is, and I'll just close them just like that, real quick. Not your traditional, go through all the numbers, closing, and initialing, and putting times, and doing all the back and forth you'll find with someone in larger purchases, and usually in larger cities. Small towns, you know, if you can't trust somebody, you're starting out in trouble, I guess. Next thing you get typically is a warranty deed, which the contract usually specifies you will get, a warranty deed. What's better in terms of being an owner? A warranty deed or a special warranty deed? You know, to a property, somebody, is it still called property? Anybody know? Well, there's nothing special about a special warranty deed. In fact, it's a cut below a quitclaim deed. So what do you want is a warranty deed? And there's one of them right there. This guy dates one of the Permenter girls from Greenville. Dr. Permenter had 4 daughters. They all came to Ole Miss in succession. So he had 16 years of girls at Ole Miss. Most of them were like Miss Ole Miss and everything. Anyway, that's his girlfriend, Lamar Saxfield, and his 2 sisters. They inherited this house in Clarksdale, and he was the only one in the state. See his address versus theirs. They live on a nice little island off the coast of Maine where a lot of celebrities have houses called Islesboro. And he was doing the work, and his sisters and he were sharing the rent, which is an untenable situation unless you really love your sisters. And he decided to sell the house because he was getting calls frequently from the tenant they had in the house, and he lived in Jackson. This house is at 168 West 2nd Street. I was on the scaffold the other day working on it. And I bought it for almost nothing. Well, it wasn't $10, but actually I paid $18,500 for this sort of architecturally cute house. You won't get a deal like that in Oxford, I assure you. And I borrowed, though, look at the next one. And the next one. And the next one. The last of that one. All right. Well, that's the D. Go to the promissory note again. I called my friend Willis Fraser, and he said, what do you need? I said, how about $30,000, and I'll give you this house. He said, okay. So I borrowed $30,000, and there I am, borrowed from the Covenant Bank in Clarksdale. And I'll probably spend about 8 or 10 of that. I don't know yet. I kind of guesstimated out on it. And that's what I'll have in this house eventually. Is about 25 to 30,000, somewhere in that area. And you know, the bank will stick a few charges on you. If you don't have credit, that's what your friends and family are for initially. If you want to buy your first house and you don't have established credit, I urge you all to at least get a credit card and pay it back every month. Build some credit, because you need a credit score. And then you need some bank willing to take a little risk with you right out of school. It's not that hard to get credit, but starting out, you're going to be borrowing money, and typically a bank will loan you right out of school with modest credit, probably 70 to 75%, maybe 80% of the ultimate value of the house. And knowing you have to put money into these properties, you've got to let the bank know what you're going to ultimately have in it so they can look at the value. They'll either get an appraiser to go appraise it, or they'll look at the tax records to see what the state has appraised the value of the house to be, and then they'll base the loan on a percentage of that. Good credit, old days, back to the old days now, after the housing burst, bust, whatever, is about 80% in a traditional financed residential unit for an owner. Now, for a rental property, they might not loan you quite that much to value. It's a percentage, LTV, loan to value. But that's a deed of trust, or a note, that's a note. And then the deed of trust is right behind it. And yeah, this is the deed of trust that matches up to that promissory note. You'll get it up there in a second. Of course, you have the legal description right here is the same as on your warranty deed. So the package becomes, in my kind of case like this, you pay for the house, you get a deed, you correspondingly and almost simultaneously, in this case, you borrow the money, you sign the note, you execute the deed of trust, the deed of trust gets recorded, and when you pay it off, it's released or it's canceled in the Chancery Clerk's office, and then you're free and clear on the ownership. Is there any advantage about interest payments that you have to make? If you just pay cash for it and not even have to borrow, would that be some advantage? Well, it could be. Interest payments are still deductible right now, so that's probably a good thing. And then you end up, when you accumulate some of these properties, you end up having to, of course, file your tax returns. Let's go to that next block of documents if you can. The deed of trust, you better read them, but who cares? They're not going to let you argue with them. You just sign it like it is, or you don't get the loan to it. But this is not tax returns. Maybe I can't file until October now of every year. I get multiple extensions because I'm involved in so many things. I have to wait on 1099s, K1s, other corporate returns, and then we go and put all these properties on here. And I recommend getting an accountant to do that, but have a set of real books going too. My wife would teach math so she could knit, follow every Ole Miss sport, read books, play mahjong, and do this an hour a day and get paid for it. But she doesn't do this. She does some of this, and or she keeps up with the rent and she pays the bills. And does a great job. I'm not making light of that, but still, it's a cush job. So. Somebody has to do it. But anyway, this is just one page out of a multi-page tax return that I file now. And that just shows you how we keep up with some costs. Now, I can tell you this, on insurance, for instance, I did not pay $389 at a premium for each of those 3 properties shown there. My accountant lumps together all those types of expenses and then spreads them out over a number of properties now. But the expenses on each property are kept together because I insure all those properties in one big hump now. But it just shows you what some of that ends up looking like. And there is a depreciation figure right down here. It's called depreciation expense. But the expenses in the notion of which I talked about them earlier is like repairs and supplies right there. Those come off your income before you reach an adjusted gross income, which leads to taxable income later. Now here are some examples of a few properties that I have, and I'll show you what I have in them versus what I have in rental income. There's a little house at 419 Elm Street. This was apparently one of those 23 properties that I put up for that big loan that time, because this is a kind of it's called a drive-by appraisal. Somebody who's knowledgeable of real estate in your area will go by, you provide them with the address and the legal and a little more information, and they drive by and they do an estimate of what they think it's worth. This is not a detailed appraisal. Those cost a lot and they're very lengthy, and they approach the valuation in certain different methods like income approach and comps approach and all that. But this one, I probably have about $47,000 in it. And is that a good rent for $47,000? What's 1% of $47,000? Anybody? 470? Come on. Okay. Is it? Yeah. All right. Well, 470 would be 1%. And I've told you the range is what? 1 1/4 to 1 1/2. I know I'm carrying y'all pretty fast. That's how my yard man said, you carry me too fast, and now tell me what to do. Well, maybe you'll get these handouts, but just remember. So 585 is in a good range. It may even be on the high end of a good range. Show them another one there, Mr. Perez. This is a property I got 2 for 1, sort of. This is a house at 150 Oakhurst, and that one is actually behind it on the alley there. And this property, I have separate appraisals, but have separate rental income. There's $47,000 on the front and $18,000 on the back, but those properties again, see, they fit in there. Now that one at $18,000 fits in real well. We're up about 170%, I think, on that one instead of 150 or 1.5. So that's a good property, and those stay pretty well rented up all the time. In fact, they're always rented. 159 Maple. this is a tiny little house here that, tiny and little for nothing, it's tiny. And we have a really good tenant in this house. You know, it was like a dollhouse when you look at it. I think I bought that one for $17,000 and put about 7 or 8 in it. And I get $350 a month rent in that house right now. The good news is what you have in these houses doesn't normally increase, but over time you kind of bump the rental up and you get it up on the high side of norm, and then you can do real well with them. Here's another one of a more contemporary house on College Street. That Green Acres subdivision, had that imagination, Green Acres. And that one at $35,000, rented for $500, 1%, $350, 1 1/4, how much would it be? About $425 or something. So that's $500. That's a good one there. Maybe I just picked out good ones to show you. 505 Cherry. I've got about $30,000 in it, and I'm getting $430 rent. Another good deal. Next house, 140 Catawba, little bungalow, looks like Cape Cod, called Diamonds and Rounds, little shingles up in that part of it. And that one is, that one's close to the margin. See, 42.5 in it, and I'm getting 505 in that. Y'all would just love these kind of rents over here in Oxford, wouldn't you? None of these are 2-bedroom houses. I was in a domestic case the other day, even down at Southern, where nobody wants to go, and the rent down there for a 2-bedroom apartment was $1,070. I asked this guy, you telling me his rent is $535 a month, and that's just for the 1 bedroom that he uses? Yeah, that's it. We need to raise some rent. 231 Cherry, a small one, but a good return on that house. See, it doesn't really matter how much you have in them, it's what you're getting out of them. So you collect a whole bunch of cheap ones and make some really good income out of them. Here's another pretty good one, 206 Cherry. Notice I pick houses to buy that have a little bit of architectural interest. They're not just plain Jane houses. These are more fun to fix up. Got that nubby brick and a vaulted ceiling and a fireplace, and it's kind of cool inside. Well, that's a run of them. Show them this other picture. This is what got me started. I used to build little cabins down on Mill Creek, and then I started building pretty exotic tree houses down there. Some of them 5 stories with ladders you had to toggle loose, and they'd roll down on a rope and climb up them. I've always been industrious. I learned to tie those knots as a Boy Scout. But I picked up that building right there from somebody. My wife decided she needed a gym, so she and a few friends opened the ladies' gym. That's what it says down here. But upstairs, I made 2 nice apartments up there. The beauty in some of these old buildings is that the ceilings are really high, and often they have walk-in vaults. That one did because that was the original Bank of Clarksdale, built in 1900. And the stairway going up is on the left side of that. The newspaper did a little story on it. There's Francine. This was probably, I don't know, 12 years ago or so. Right up there, I'm standing in one of those old-fashioned elevators that has those expandable doors. That's in another building that's now called the Hotel Clarksdale. I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. Okay, next one up, please. Here I am, thin and young, or younger. This was, I think, a grandson who came in to work one summer. These are just some other examples of properties I own. We'll get you a couple of close-up looks at this. This is Lyon, Mississippi, Lyon, Lyon, Mississippi. It's a suburb of Clarksdale, if you will. And it had a flourishing little downtown. When the railroad relocated, the downtown sort of came up just out of nowhere. And as it turned out, and this house right here has been occupied by Teach for America kids for a long time. It's 3 houses that were pulled together and made into one house with a common roof. And that front part is the oldest structure in the county. It's got triple hung windows and rosettes and different plinth blocks are called. Architectural details are really kind of interesting inside that. A couple whose dad, her dad's a federal judge in Los Angeles. His family are all lawyers in Connecticut. They came here as Teach for America kids and ended up getting married in Clarksdale. And they moved off. He works for Yale, and she works for something else up in Hartford area. And they like Clarksdale so much they want to move back, so they wanted to buy the house they used to rent from me, and my rule is I don't usually sell them, but for them, I'm gonna make an exception. But we're gonna have to move some people out of that one, move them down the street, so I'm working on this house today. I've got a crew out on it right now, actually. We're gonna take them out of that one, move them down the street to this one, and let the friends that we made from their wedding in Clarksdale buy that house. But the line, well, it had like a baker and a barber and all the deals, and the original bank of line. And I bought up the downtown, except one building. I'd improved the value of the downtown so much that Cliff Heaton owned the Heaton family. You'll probably know some of them. They've had a lot of real students come through here. I think one's over here now. But they wouldn't sell me that last one on the block. They fixed it up themselves, so they kind of caught on. You know, when Disney World relocated, or didn't relocate, built up in Orlando, they very surreptitiously got options on all that property. Because if anybody found out Disney was buying next door, they'd hold out for, dear life and make them pay a lot. It was a pretty good move they did to buy all that up. So I was less hidden in my approach to line. I just started buying it up, got down the end of the block, somebody said, "Oh no, man, look what you did for my property." So you're welcome. So they got it. Okay. Next one up, please. My law office is in this building. Before that, it was just in this building that you don't see. Nice little Williamsburg style building built by a couple of Harvard law grads back in the 40s. My dad joined them in 1948. And as our firm grew after I got back, this was known when I was a kid as Sam's Cafeteria. And it has that old Art Deco kind of curved glass block over here. And it's got a red terracotta big square tile floor in it. And I eat lunch there a lot of Sundays and all. Church crowd would go there. So I bought that building. At first I could only access it over to about right here by cutting an opening through our wall, and I fixed up the inside of this part and some of the outside because this man had rented it from the cafeteria family, had his liquor store in there. And he also took me turkey hunting and fishing, so I didn't want to bust him out of there. So I let Johnny Compassi stay on there for a few years, and then when he closed his business, I took the rest of it over. But in the meantime, I got it fixed up, and this is what it looked like when I finished. Flash. There, right there. See, I took that and just rearranged that whole front. I saved those glass blocks on the far end, and when you go in our door and look down a hall that houses my wife in another law office, and our reception area is over here to the right. This is my office here, and this is Rob Tyner right here now. I put those glass blocks at the end of the wall and put some lighting around them so they can look cool at the end of the hall. No picture of that the other day. And this, I told you I got bolder and bolder as time went on. I started buying bigger things. And I was a little bit scared of this one from just an investment standpoint. You see the one right there, well, there are 15 of these. This is the Country Club Apartments. They're 101 units. And I could buy them for $2 million, but I was a little scared. So I had a friend who's a hunting club buddy of mine. His cabin's next door to me on the Mississippi River now. And I called Robert Halverman and said, because everything he touches has turned to gold. But I found out it turned to gold because he lives in Fort Myers, Florida. It didn't turn to gold here, but it's worth something still. And I called Robert and asked him if he wanted to invest 50-50 with me in this deal. But I tell you, this was a sweet deal the way I structured it. So pay attention. We could buy this for about $2 million. And I had good credit. So I went to the bank, and the bank told me they'd loan me 90% of what it would take to buy this property. 90%. And I formed a corporation. We should have done an LLC now. But I formed a C Corp to own this property, and Robert and I own the stock 50-50. And then we loaned, each of us, the corporation, the other $200,000. So it had debt to us, the corporation did. So when we got the property and took it over, I bumped the rents up, started restoring the property. And in addition to paying back the bank the $1.8 million, it was paying us monthly to repay a note. The bottom line of that is I had no money in this property as an actual investment. I was a creditor of this business. It's a great formula if you can make it work. Now, the way to make that work is have a real friendly bank, good credit. And I started working on, you can see, a lot of what we call deferred maintenance, meaning they just let it rot, didn't do anything about it for years. The sellers, by the way, did it about $800,000 after they paid their debt off on this. And this is an example. There's a picture coming up. I still use those scaffolds. That's how it looks generally now. Although this was 1996, and I'm still taking care of new roofs and some of the deferred maintenance, but we pretty well have it all caught up now. So pretty soon it'll start yielding some income to me. As of now, I think we've got one dividend each of $10,000, but we built equity. The value has gone up because this is regarded as the nicest apartment complex in Clarksdale. It's on 10 acres, it's got a nice swimming pool, and it's well located. It's immediately east of Lee Academy, and it's in a good part of town. So I'm enjoying the fruit, or maybe my children will more than I, of a lot of equity in this property. It appraises now, kind of depending on who and when you ask, but about 2.8 to 3.2 million, and the debt on it now is down about 900,000. So that may be an instant millionaire, that one property right there, see? 50% of the difference between 900 and, say, it's rounded up to 3 million. But no income producing out of it, just building equity. Well, how do you get it to income produce? If you've got your debt service covered, your taxes covered, your maintenance covered, your vacancy, this thing stays a waiting list. So it's always occupied except when we clean up, repaint, when somebody's moving in or somebody moving out. Maintenance is 3 full-time maintenance people, though. We get broken things all the time. So maintenance is pretty high. But we raise the rents to overcome the what? Principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Vacancy is not an issue. Raise the rents, and you put a margin in there, right? About what it costs you to have it versus what you're taking in. Then you can start deriving some income, officer pay, dividends, and that sort of thing. But my mistake was making that a corporation because the income is first taxed at the corporate level before it trickles down to us. Anyway, I'm okay with it so far, so good. That's the railroad track, and that's part of downtown Lime right there. This was Captain Kidd's junk teak shop. I started buying the property right here, and I bought a 2-story building I'll show you in a minute, and it was just in horrible condition. In fact, the bank looked at it as one of my first investments of a larger than a house building, and they just said, "This, well, you know what, me?" I said, "No, wait and see." So I started buying along. There was a decorator in Clarksdale who moved over from Helena, Arkansas, named George Spivey. He developed quite a reputation. If any of you have heard of a sorority house here called Chi Omegas, he used to come over and about every 5 years sort of upgrade their interior. He'd do the draperies and, you know, the sofas and all the furniture and all that. He's still alive, lives in Memphis now, but he was quite a nice fellow and had a huge business all over the Delta, and it even got to Oxford and Jackson and Memphis and other places. Great taste, just a great guy. He lived in right here. And so I bought this, and this at the same, no, from here back at the same time in one purchase. And then I bought a Quonset hut over here and another Quonset hut, round metal buildings. One of them I use as sort of a Batman cave garage, pull in one end part, pull out the other. The other is my construction headquarters, and we keep it closed up, keep trailers and trucks in it and stuff. And then I started buying down the street. This one, and then this one, and then this is the one that Eaton's kept and fixed it up for themselves. And I think we've got a picture of, well, this is an interesting story on this building right here. Archie Manning's aunt, a lady named Yvette Robertson. Her husband played football at Ole Miss. She's related to Archie somehow. And she owned this, well, all right, that's good. She owned this building. And I was trying to buy from her. See, I was doing my march down the street, and she just said, "Bill, my children want me to keep it." One of her children is Nancy Wilkie, who's married to Curtis, who lives here. Nancy claims to be my cousin. If she had some money, I'd claim her to be mine. No, she's sweet as she is. And another of her daughters is Melissa, who lives in New York and works for a big magazine company up there. And she kept blaming it on her children. Oh, my Nancy and Melissa don't want me to sell it, don't want me to sell it. Well, it sat there empty, deteriorating. Why? Please, the building's going to be worthless soon. I think I offered her 30 or 32,000 at one time for it. She said, I just can't sell it, just can't sell it. It's been in the family. And I said, well, you don't have anything left to sell pretty soon. Well, about 5 more years go by, and I got a call from a guy named Steve Vaught. He said, Bill, aren't you interested in Y. Robertson's property up in Lyon? I said, yeah, I've given up on her. He said, well, it's for sale. I just listed it. And I said, why didn't she call me first? See, he's a broker. He's going to have to get paid something, so he's getting in the way of me a little. I said, what does she want for it? He said, 12,000 or something. I said, well, I offered her 32 once, and she didn't take it. And he said, Bill, it's just worthless. I said, I know, that's what I tried to tell her. I said, I'll take it. So he said, well, okay, I'll get a contract ready. I said, no, I'm writing a check right now. The deal will be ready before you get to my office. And he still brags that was the quickest deal he ever has listed and pitched and sold and closed in 2 hours. Anyway, I took that property and it was worthless. The only thing left after the traco got through was the front wall. That was it, the front wall. I had to tear it down. And anyway, put the awnings up, redid the front, and that property's been rented ever since. A doctor lives in that now, a pediatrician. And there's a street scene now that'll show you some more of Lyon right there. I call this Spivey Road in honor of George Spivey, because he was my friend and I bought the property from him. And then there's another street scene, there it is. These lights right here are called fan lights, multi-lights, fan lights. They came from old plantation homes. And if you notice, this is reddish looking, this glass. And this one over here has got a little tint too. That was the old-fashioned, I'm talking 1800s, one-way mirror deal. They tinted this glass and you couldn't see through. You know, they tint cars now, windows. But that was the way it was done. Those were original door things from plantations in eastern Arkansas and north Mississippi. And this was the part back here where I lived for a while, and now a doctor rents that for me as well. The next slide shows you the entrance. You walk alongside the building, you'll see. That's it. Whoop, back up, back. Right there. Quonset hut's here to the left. Walk in here, the entrance to our old house is right there. And as I say, a doctor rents that now. You don't get mail delivery in Lyon except by post office box, so I got imaginative when I named this property. This is 111 Spivey Road, S, meaning south. That's the south, and there's an M for middle and an N for north. And another picture. That's looking from the Batman walk across to the front door of that property. And we only had really 2 bedrooms in there, and my grandchildren were coming along, and we have a lot of guests. I live in another place now anyway, but I added on that guest house behind the row on Main Street line, behind one of the old commercial establishments. And this is lived in now by my cousin Sims Luckett. And if you don't know him, you should. He holds the record for the longest tenure of an Ole Miss student in history. He finished 2 years of law school before he was kicked out for not being qualified to get in to start with. He's at everything Ole Miss, everything. He'll be over here Friday for the 11:10 tip-off, and he says, of course, if there's a baseball game, I'll be at that one too. He goes to tennis, track, Thacker Mountain, baseball, football, readings, what have you, everything. He's got a lot of tenure, he's got a lot of friends. He was meeting children in class, and he could legitimately say, well, you know, your mom and I were in Algebra 1 my first year here. I mean, they're children in class now. He did take a break for a couple of years in the National Guard. He spans 19 years as a student. And I was standing with him, and Dean Parham Williams, about 2 or 3 deans ago, walked up and said, Sims, You know you finished 60 hours towards your 90-hour law degree? That's what we did back then. I guess you may still do it that way now. It's probably credits or something. He just puffed up like a peacock. Said, yes, sir, Dean Williams. And Dean said, Sims, we can't let you finish. You weren't, how did you get in to start with? Did your daddy do that? Daddy was a lawyer down the street from me in Clarksdale, and he said, I guess he did. So they kicked him out of law school until he finished his undergraduate degree. His hang-up was Spanish. He had taken every foreign language offered at Ole Miss except the easy one, which is Spanish. At least it was easy then. And he had a turquoise Mustang, and every day I was going out at 6:30 painting the houses every morning from my house across the street. I'd see him trucking off to Oxford. He's a very, very intelligent guy. And I thought, he's going to get his undergraduate degree. This is unbelievable. He started in 1955. We're now up in like 1974 or 3, somewhere in there. And he was sitting on his porch one morning, and I thought school was kind of about over now. And I went up and I said, Sims, have you already finished your summer school? He said, no, today was my exam day. I got to Batesville. I just couldn't go through with it. Commuted every day for summer school and then go take the exam. Well, you know what grade he got there. Anyway, he never got his law degree either, so but he is as well read as they get. He went out to Aspen, dated Kate Jackson, one of the original Charlie Angels, got to be really good friends with Ed Bradley, formerly of 60 Minutes, great friends with Jack Nicholson. Pretty soon there's a magazine out there called WWD, Women's Wear Daily, and there's another one like Variety, one of those. And they've shown a Muhammad Ali fight on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He's written up all these magazines and newspapers, and they're ringside, front row with Jack Nicholson. There's my cousin Sims, right between his legs. I wonder, what is this guy doing? But it's friends in high places that he has, and that's what he was doing. He was traveling around the world with Marissa Berenson, John Huston's daughter or something, and Jack Nicholson. So now he's back, living right there. He came back to take care of his parents when they got sick or in car wrecks, and ultimately they both died, and so he rents from me. And I guess. Okay, next picture. This is a picture taken of the Hotel Clarksdale. See that nice looking eyebrow there? That was kind of the second tier hotel in Clarksdale back in the day. I think there was about the 30s. And the newspaper, which was located to the right in that photograph, had bought that building in later years to probably tear it down and make it for parking, but then the newspaper didn't need all the space, and to make a long story short, they said, Bill, flash to the next one, please. We will give you this building. Now, in the meantime, they had put this little tin thing and taken the eyebrow off and covered up these nice curved windows here with some sheet metal and put aluminum door types in it and just trashed it up, at least in my view. I'm on the Heritage Trust Commission, so I like old buildings. And I bought that, I didn't buy that building. They said, we'll give you this building if you will spend $50,000 on it. And I said, that's a deal. So I took it and I spent $450,000 on it. And that's it during one phase of construction. And there's another view showing that same look. See, by now I have put that eyebrow back on it and actually extended it out a little bit just to give some rain shelter walking under it like an awning from that archival picture. And then we have a finished product. No, yep, right there. That's what it looks like. By the way, if you saw the movie The Help, this building right here and this building right here were made into O'Keeffe's clothing store for a street scene that was in The Help. This building now has 8 apartments. This is 3A, 3B, 3C, 2A, B, C, and then downstairs front, downstairs back. And I was able to find a lot of the original lighting chandeliers and stuff and put them all back into place. And that building stays full with 8 apartments right in downtown Clarksdale now. Okay, let's move on kind of fast now. This is a building that was the Bank of Lime. It's on that same down Main Street in Lime. I bought this building from a guy named Van Dorn Cato from down in Florida. I had my eye on this building for quite a while because I thought it'd really be a cool building to kind of fix up and downstairs, cut an opening in the back wall, pour a big slab, and have kind of a pull in the back, in the building, parking, and kind of be cool like that. That's still in it. I preserved all that. cashier, bookkeeper, walk-in vault. Next picture, please. That's the front of it during some of the construction work I was doing. That's what it looked like when I bought it, right there. It had been sitting empty for 50 years. It didn't have one piece of glass in it anywhere, and the roof was just caved in. That was it. That's the one the banker walked out and said, "You've got to be me." I said, "Wait and see." So I got to work on it. I cut some openings with some huge concrete block saws over here, built some decks, put a tin on them so you can hear when it rains, put ceiling fans for outside, screen them all in, and what's next? There it is, finished. Got 8 units in it, had a little room in the back, so I pulled the house out from Clarksdale and stuck it back there. And now, it's the nicest building for apartments in Clarksdale. Really high ceilings, beadboard, you know, transom windows, the old glass all up in it. Really, really neat place to live out in line. Next shot will be just a side view showing where I cut the openings and added the porches. And I have a nice little lady named Evelyn D'Amelio who plants these gardens and takes a lot of pride in it out there. Next one, please. Back at the early teens, 20s in Clarksdale, that building, the McWilliams building, Trent Lott's wife, Tricia, used to clean teeth when she was an Ole Miss student right there in Felix West's floor. And this bill was written up in Delta Magazine recently. It prompted a lady from Birmingham to send a letter to the editor. Her father was a dentist in northeast corner, floor 5, a roller skate rink on the very top floor. Curiously, the stairwell got real narrow and steep to go to the 7th floor. A lot of people think that top was a later add-on. This building, though, was Ellison Hirschberg Accountants. My father started his law practice in that. It housed a lot of professionals in Clarksdale back in the day. And it had fallen into some terrible disrepair. Another picture of it in the day is coming up. That's it right there. There's a bank on the 1st floor down here. And this is what it looked like. Next one. That's what it looked like when I bought it. I bought it before I ran for governor. You're getting a little common thread in what running for office does to you. See, I had great dreams, 25 great looking apartments I was going to put in there. And all I've been able to do is that so far. I yet to cut the openings out of there, but I do have it in the dry. I've got a new roof on it. I've got all the windows replaced. I've got it to a point where it will hold now. And if I ever get back around to it, I don't know. What do you think the cost of making 25 apartments in that is? Everybody's nodding their head like, don't know, right? What do you guess?
750,000.
500,000,
750,000. How nice an apartment?
No, it's about a $4.5 million project. Yeah, 2 elevators alone to get them functioning is about $300,000 by itself. It's got to be totally rewired, replumbed, everything. But anyway, move on to the next one. Right across the street from it, this was back in the day, as you can tell from the vehicles. This is the very famous Alcazar Hotel. Again, feeling sorry for my hometown, but I had help with this one. I own this with a guy from California and a guy from New York. If you read Tennessee Williams, a lot of his plays are actually set in this hotel. If you know the Emmett Till trial from 1955, this is where the international and national media stayed during that whole trial process. And if you watch some show about ghosts and paranormals on TV, that film crew just showed up about Friday a week ago and asked me if I had an old scary building they could explore, and they just sent me the clip from what's going to be on TV. I gave them a key to go in this place, and they were scared to death. I tell you that. At least they acted like it. So next shot, please. This is what it came to look like with years and years of neglect. All the paint's off, most of the windows were broken out, it's just in horrible condition, blight on our downtown. And now after a couple of $100,000, it looks like, can't see is the roof here, which is a $60,000 roof job. You get to the next slide. There. I have been able to get a roof on it, and every piece of broken glass fixed, and everything reglazed, and all the upper floors on these 2 elevations, Yazoo Avenue and 3rd Street, fixed and painted. just got awarded a matching grant, 50/50, to do this downstairs, and we're gonna put it back as a period piece. It's on the historic register. I'm very careful about preserving things. Y'all heard of Medidi Restaurant. Morgan and I had to close it because it just, it served its purpose. It got downtown jump-started. That's what the building looked like. It housed Landry's, which is now down on South Lamar, and I bought it from that family. And that's what it looked like when I bought it, and then I got busy on it and made Medidi Restaurant out of it, and it looks now, or later, that's some construction going on, and what did it turn out to be? There it is right there, all kind of redone in and out. So those are some projects that I have tackled along the way to give you a little idea of what kind of improvement you can do if you get in this business. And you can build wealth, and you can help your town out, and you can improve the looks of buildings as you do it. And maybe you can do one of those big ones one day like that. All right, questions? You got about 4 minutes. Yes, Ms. Ma'am.
I have a few questions. When you were first starting out, you didn't use a real estate broker because it would increase your costs?
Well, in some cases, I've seen a for sale sign and I
And you
would
had to
call a
contact them.
broker.
Right.
I didn't have my own broker.
Okay.
no.
And then, did you use an inspector? I mean, what if you bought a
Well, I
business
see,
and-
I have a trained eye now more. I still get hooked with some things I didn't catch. You could get a housing inspector to go in and he'll test everything and tell you whether you've got leakage here or problems there, or the wiring is aluminum, not copper, and do all that. Helps being a little handyman. It helped having my background. Not that you can't do it without my background, it's just you're gonna have to spend a little more to
That's
do
right.
it, or guess a little.
And that was my next question was, you had the 1.5 to 1.7% rule to cover your expenses.
1.25 to 1.5.
I'm sorry, 1.25 to 1.5. Once you got to 23 properties, did you hire a property management group? And then is that also included in, no?
Yeah, maintenance is part of that. And some of the expenses I have are my wife. who
Okay.
helps me. She just gets paid.
Okay,
And it's 23 are just in one loan. And, she manages 72 properties now, and then we have an apartment complex manager for the other 101. So what we do now is I have a crew who work for me most of the time. There are 2 of them. They're out working on a house now, cleaning up some limbs that fell on it and doing some that sort of work. Then I have a maintenance crew of 3 men who do all the heat and air, and they capture freon. I've trained them how to do all this stuff. And they work at the Country Club Apartments, and we move them over to do some of our other work. Yeah, that will add to your maintenance expense, not having that. But when you get big enough, you get that, and you just pay them by the hour rather than calling a contractor to do the work. Yes, sir.
I was asking, in your formula, do you include, what type of loan of value would you recommend starting out, as well as interest rate and term of the loan, 30-year, 15-year?
Well, okay, I negotiate them all a little separately. You kind of look at what you think the rent will bear, then you back from there. If you can get $500 a month rent, and you know your insurance is X a year, and you know your taxes are X a year, and you got so much for debt service, and you need a little cushion for maintenance and vacancy, then you go look and you ask the lender to loan you, give you a 5% amortization, or something, 5-year, 7-year, 10-year. Most of them, commercial lenders won't go over 15 years. It's not like buying a house where you get a 30-year mortgage. So you have to just play with that and get to know the business side of that a little bit and see what model works. That's how I do it. Yes, you have a question?
Yes, sir. That was it, Jeremy. I know you bought the Country Club Apartments and used a corporation to buy that. Or is there other rentals under a corporation?
All my other property is just in my name. No, I'll take that back. The Alcazar Hotel is Alcazar Hotel LLC. The McWilliams Building is McWilliams LLC. All my houses are just in my name. And if you're a sole proprietor, you know, if you set up a corporation, you could sub-S and do the same thing, but you have to file 2 tax returns, and it's just a nuisance to have to keep books for a corporation that you wholly own. I wouldn't recommend it if you're going to be the only owner. The idea of an LLC or a corporation is to shield you from individual liability as a barrier, or you can't pierce the veil, so to speak. If you have employees working for you, you don't want them to render you liable necessarily for some negligent act.
when the banks are considering loan to value, you said they use an appraisal.
They could
How
have
does-
and
Well, I
wanted
was
to
gonna
appraise
ask if the contract price had any bearing on that.
it. It does, it
Okay.
certainly does, and so does the tax appraisal. Yeah, there's such scrutiny now of banks, you almost have to prove you don't need money in order to borrow it. And they get audited now, and they want income producing properties, they don't want to loan money. Morgan Freeman and I own 200 acres right up here on Molly Bar, and Tom Howard, I'm gonna leave him out. One bank loaned us some money to do some infrastructure improvement and would not loan us money. They wouldn't loan Morgan Freeman money. Think about that for a minute. Because it's not an income producing property, but it's a bank that got highly scrutinized and the TARP run down and all that. And I sit on its board, and no one let me money. I think I owe them so much they put me on the board. It's called Regions Bank. But you have to, we found a loan source for it.
Does it become, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But we're paying it alone by the month, but the property produces no income. It's just sitting out here, 200 acres. Fortunately, our neighbors are putting 36 million into their project next door. Got our value. But we got screwed over by the first developer. We shared some expenses. We paid our share of theirs. They didn't pay their share of ours. Another lawsuit, help me a lawyer if you have real estate, so represent yourself, sort of. Another question?
Is it,
Time.
one more, and it's relevant.
I'll
to
stay
that.
as long as y'all want. If you have to leave, get up and go.
We have to 140 for officially to the next class, so as
Oh.
long as they can stay.
Good. As long as you can stand me, I'll stay.
This
Yeah.
question's kind of relevant to my first one, but I guess the reason I was asking that is, is it possible to get a loan on a house if you can negotiate a lower contract price than the appraisal price to reduce the amount you have to come up with of your own equity? And, I mean, is that possible?
If your example is like this, let's say the house is, tax appraisal is 50,000. You get a good friend to do you an appraisal. They don't do it for you, they do it for the lender. That's technically how it works, you pay for it. And he says it's 50,000, and yet you can buy it for 30, and you can borrow 40 against it on an 80% loan to value and put 10 in your pocket. That's
So
rare.
There are banks that, oh, you're saying it's rare.
It's rare. Yeah, because the
That
banks
banks
will
will
ask you
allow
what
it,
you're
or that
paying
you will
for.
find it?
They don't want to give you more money than you paid for it. They want you to have skin in the game big time. So they don't think you'll get foreclosed if you've got skin in the game. You're going to hold on to your equity. If you walk out with part of their money and leave them holding the bag, then they don't like that equation. But it can happen. It can happen. But you need good credit. You get lucky, it can happen. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Is there a property you can think of where you made a big mistake buying it, you wish you hadn't?
I have got my second thoughts called buyer's remorse about those two big buildings right now that Alcazar fixed up to make 37 apartments. If we filled every one of them up with 100% occupancy under my formula, I would have to spend $25,000 a month just to stay even. In other words, I take a $25,000 a month loss. That's, I don't like that equation. I mean, pay money to lose money. But if we do a hotel out of it and we can build in some good occupancy somehow with the building of tourism we're doing in Parksdale now, then it could probably turn. I converted 7,500 square foot upstairs space above Ground Zero Blues Club. There's a big open space into loft style apartments, all furnished, some 2-bedroom, 2 baths, really nice apartments. The downstairs is sort of like it is, but the upstairs is real nice. And I did it long-term rental, but the demand grew to where can we stay overnight? Where can we stay overnight? And you could send them out to Junkie Comfort Inn on the highway. So I just let the leases expire and got a lady to do all the cleanup and sheet changes and all that stuff. And when you're 10 or under units, you don't have to pay some hotel and other taxes and all that. So I have now 8 units in there. We run them overnight. They've turned into a good profit center for me. Bill Rose and Susan Puckett and 19 of your undergrads here in journalism school, we broke a rule on them bring air mattresses and 6 guys, like y'all do, in motels. I know how it works. We try to limit the number of people wearing out the bathrooms by limiting the number of people who can occupy a unit, but they can pass out on couches and and all that. So we let them just rent the stuff and stay in there. We had 21 people up there in 7 apartments. The adults got their own, the kids just kind of crammed in. But that's a good moneymaker for us right now, doing overnight. That one, I think I got about 300 and something thousand in it. But it's paying down nicely and building equity, and it works. The formula works there. But it's outside the mold of what I've told y'all about. This is for residential long-term rental, what I'm talking about. There are a lot of other factors when you get into overnight stuff, as you can imagine. You got to have somebody keep up with all that all the time. Cancellations, call-ins, check-ins, sheets, soap, shower didn't work, toilet stopped up. I mean, we get those calls residential, but you get a lot more of that when you're doing such a big turnover. Steel light bulbs, whatever. Yes, sir.
Mr. Luckett, specifically maybe even with homes too, but maybe with those other types of buildings that have historical significance, do you know you've gotten any tax incentives from the historic preservation stuff that?
Yeah. There are a lot of things that work there. If you restore a building that was just built before a certain age, you get a 10% deduction, basically, tax-wise, for some of those expenses of rehabbing. If you fit into the historic credits, you can get a 25, I think 20 or 25% federal and 20 or 25, the total is 45 state. So state and federal, 45%. You can maybe find somebody who's got a handle on some new market tax credits and pull that into the equation as well. But those projects with new markets don't really work unless you're over 10 million. They don't work well that way. They don't work nearly as well under 10 million. Both those are under 10. But yeah, you want to definitely take advantage of those opportunities because they are big helps. But still, that Alcazar was going to lose money. I did a pro forma on it. You know what that is because you run my plans. And it just lost money under the traditional rule of what you have to put in a property and we'll do the multiple and see what the reasonable expectation of rents is and multiply it by 37 and then look at your cost of interest, principal, and all the rest. And it was a loser. It was going to lose $300,000 a year. Because I'll have $7 million in it to start with. A lot of rent to overcome that. $7 million, do my multiple. $7 million, what do you have to get in rent every month out of there? 1% would be $70,000, right? 1 1/4 would be about 86. 1 1/2 would be about $105,000 a month in rent. Okay, 35 apartments, $105,000 in rent. Do the math. That's $3,000 an apartment. Can you get that in Clarksdale or walk up a 6-floor apartment? No, it was a loser. It wasn't gonna work. But a hotel might. Or just fixing the building up, securing it on the upper floors, leaving it empty, and just doing the first floor might be an idea we might do too. Right now, I got the ghost people coming back. I've got to leave it. I may make a sound stage out of it for some film production too. So I don't know what I'll do. Yes. You have a question? Nope. You just scratch it. Anybody else? Comments or questions? I know I carried you fast, as I said, but you hope you got some ideas here, and let me know when you buy your first property. Thank you very much.
If y'all didn't sign that sheet, if you would, sign that and give your email. And if you'd like a copy of this or a link to get to this presentation to view some of that, just let me know. You can shoot me an email sometime. Or if you come out of this, I'll let you your email.